Every situation like this where an officer shoots a suspect, we see the words, "in my training," come up. Too often media talks about bad cops, but often does not talk about whether or not police are being trained badly. Let's have that discussion. I was joined earlier by retired U.S. Marshal Matthew Fogg, and I asked him if officers are trained to eliminate threats, even by deadly force.
Well, that's interesting, but when you say to eliminate deadly force, I mean, yes. I mean, certainly any officer would want to try to neutralize a situation. But the bottom line is if you have to use force against force. So our training teaches us the same amount of force, you use that same amount of force to stop it. So in this case, yeah, that's our training. It's if somebody's trying to kill you or harm you, you got to use a certain amount of force to stop that.
So, and the reason I bring that up is because over and over, we've seen this take place with so many of these stories around the country, including this latest one in South Carolina, where a suspect may become engaged with or some kind of physical altercation with an officer,
right,
and then they run away. Darren Wilson explained that the reason that he chased after Mike Brown and Ferguson was because he said, yes, the incident between the two of them had ended and Mike Brown was running away,
right,
but Brown might have been a danger to other people, and so he pursued him. The same thing with this officer here. There's some kind of physical altercation in South Carolina. The suspect is now running away, and the officer feels the need to pursue and even end his life using deadly force. Is that part of the training that says this person is still a threat to public safety?
No, the training teaches us, now we can pursue you as a law enforcement officer, but the deadly force was over with once the weapon was, there was no weapon involved. You just simply, I already knew when I stopped this man, he wasn't a fleeing felon. He didn't have any background that gave me any concern. So, no, there wasn't no reason at all for this officer to be shooting at him. Now, he could have ran him, chased him, tracked him down, and if there had been some melee at that point, the guy tried to take his gun, then yeah. But again, these are the things that we're seeing on the camera, that we're seeing up front now that says, okay, there's a video there that shows us exactly what happened. Most of the time, we're going to say, though, in those scenarios, you know, the reason why I use deadly force.
But over and over, we hear that line that is used. The
right,
attorney for this guy in South Carolina, who, by the way, quit and left him on his own a day ago, said the officer feared for his own safety. Darren Wilson said he feared for his own safety. And
right,
we hear that. It's not just those two cases, right? Thousands upon thousands of times we hear officers say that. They feared for their safety. That becomes almost the buzzword.
That's right. That's the training.
This is justified. And that's the training. Tell me about that.
That's the training.
Okay.
The training says that whenever you use deadly force, you have to be able to justify it. So to justify it, you have to say, I either feared for the safety of myself or the safety of the public, and that this person was an extreme danger to either party. So the bottom line is that gives you the discretion to be able to use your weapon and fire back at this individual. I think what happened here is now, once these officers, when there's no video, I can always say that. And that's what the public outcry has been, that a lot of incidents where people realize folks were shot and killed, there was no weapons involved or whatever, why did the officer shoot them? And the officer always says, well, I felt for my life. In Ferguson, the thing about that is you got to realize, too, the officer, Darren, said that the suspect came back at him.
Yes.
Looking all mean and vicious, looking, and all of this, and use all these adjectives to describe him. The public didn't see that. The public saw something totally different, a man running away.
Now, in Ferguson, there was no videotape. Obviously, here in South Carolina, we have someone with a cell phone who's recording what's happening here. But in the South Carolina instance, had there been no video recording, would we talking about a very different story here?
Absolutely, certainly. I mean, and that's the problem. That's why public outcry has been body cameras, videos, is because officers, we're trained to say whenever we use deadly force, that line, I felt a danger for myself or for the public. The individual, I have time. That's why we talk about Officers' Bill of Rights, where you got 10 days to think about your story, get your story together. You hear from other detectives what they came up with, and then you come up with a line that pretty is standard that says, this is my justification. And most of the time, the public is going to go with as a law enforcement officer, they're going to believe me.
No, the last thing I'd ask you about the body cameras, you mentioned those.
Right.
But let's talk about that for a minute, because there is a lot of question about whether or not the public would have the ability to view body cameras, whether or not they would only be shown in trials. How do you get access to them? Are they mandatory to have them on? Is there a penalty if an officer does not turn that body camera on? What say you about those issues?
Well, I would say all those are legitimate issues, and those are things that have to be worked out when it comes down to how to use these cameras and when to turn them on. Make sure those cameras on at all the time. So it's sort of like dash cameras. When we see traffic stops, those dash cameras come on automatically. The same way that body camera has to be. That's the only way. And as far as it getting to the public, I think that that's information that helps the police department, because the police department can clear its officers to say, look, there was a reason we used deadly force, and we have it here on video. I think they would be glad to give it to the news and to the public.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Retired U.S. Marshal Matthew Fogg, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.